Welcome to IMC Live, everybody, the interactive webinar series hosted by the Industrial Marketing Collective. Like Alan said, we're here to help you connect with your peers, sharpen your skills, and drive results in your work. I'm Peyton Warren. If you don't know me yet, I'm the marketing director here at Gorilla 76, the industrial marketing agency, and I'm one of your IMC Live hosts. I'm really glad that you all are here today. Our show is about generative AI and how the marketers at Gorilla 76 are all thinking about it and using it. But before we dive into that, I've got to tell you about the event you ought to have on your calendar for Q1 2026, and that is the Industrial Marketing Summit. If you love the conversations that we're having in the collective and across the Gorilla 76 podcast here on IMC Live, and you want more of that with even more marketers who truly get what you do, join us in Austin, Texas, March 3rd through 5th, 2026. The conference is literally made for marketers in manufacturing and marketers at technical companies. There's going to be 16 practical sessions. I see a few of the speakers on this call today, even 3 deep dive workshops, and honestly, the community that's there is just second to none. So if you come, you'll leave with actionable playbooks, fresh inspiration, and a crew of peers who make you feel seen, heard, and ready to tackle the rest of your year. So come and geek out with us for 3 full days of industrial marketing. And you can learn more, grab your tickets, all at industrialmarketingsummit.com. So let's get into today's topic, though. It goes without saying that generative AI is here to stay, but why does it always feel like the best use cases are being gatekept? Why are we keeping secrets, everyone? Well, if you've been following Gorilla for any time at all, you know how we feel about gates. Who needs them? We skip gates on most occasions. But today, Alan, myself, and a few other Gorilla marketers are going to share a few use cases we've turned to time and time again over the past year. We're going to call them the three categories: the thought partner, the detective, and the executioner. All said, while we are going to share real use cases with screen shares wherever possible, we're still going to talk about strategy because using AI without strategic and ethical principles is a recipe for wasting your time and also deteriorating your own brand. So let's just go ahead and kind of do a little round robin here, introduce some of our gorillas, and we're going to start there with strategy. So the gorillas who are going to be chiming in on the call today, you want to unmute and just say hi?
Hi.
Start with Kevin.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Kevin McCleary, head of performance marketing at Gorilla. It's been a minute since I've been on IMCL, but I've chimed in a few times through the years and just excited to be back and share a little bit about data organization with
Yay.
ChatGPT.
I can go next. Hi, everyone. Maya Harrington here. I'm a strategist at Girl. I've been here about 2 years now. And I've actually never been on as, speaking on
Snuck
Peyton's,
under the radar somehow,
yeah,
Maya.
yeah, I've attended plenty of times, but, I've been here under the radar, right? No camera, but excited to talk with y'all today about generative AI.
Awesome. Cool. And then we've got a few others that are going to chime in too, as possible, but Alan and I are happy to share as well. So first things first, let's talk a little bit about AI use strategy. Oh, and look who's here, John Franco joining the chat. Perfect time for John Franco to come into the call today because I was just about to name drop him. When we're thinking about AI at Gorilla, specifically generative AI and how we're using it in any sort of like content creation. So I think like a little bit that's important. I just want to set the stage because I feel like there's a lot of like buzzwords and just also like new terminology around AI. So we're talking about generative AI, which is typically in like um, a large language model. So it's like predictive text almost. And we're looking at things like ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, and the like. So you put some sort of like human sort of dialogue in, and the AI tool spits back what seems like a human conversation that you're having. And you can use it to, build um, lots of ideas, strategies, content, etc. And there's a lot that you could do with that. You could, obviously have it just do everything for you. And we're going to talk about that with the executioner role, but we don't want it to replace us. We just want it to enhance what we're doing and help us think a little bit deeper, because that's what we feel like we do well, is the strategic thinking. And so John and Joe, our founders here at Gorilla 76, wrote a letter to everyone at our company just recently. And I just want to like read one quote from it. We're always going to be people first and AI forward, using technology as a way to enhance and amplify our thinking, but never to replace it entirely. So I think that's just, I just want to say that at the beginning of this conversation here. Like, we are not trying to come up with use cases to, like, I guess, like make the work go away, but enhance and amplify. Yeah, I know, John Franco, you're here, so feel free to chime in at any point during this conversation. But I think the other piece that we need to acknowledge here at the very beginning of this is that the hunt for other people's use cases that you can copy is not always the most productive standpoint. So while it might feel like folks are gatekeeping, sure, there's a little bit of like intellectual property maybe that like comes up with like, oh, I found like the perfect prompt or whatever. But you know, uh, it's not always the most productive starting point. So why then did I put AI use cases in the title of this episode? And why do we all have like the impulse to say, I just want to know, how are you using it? Like, what is the use case? And I want to turn that over to the group. Like, why do you all think that we all start there? I have a few ideas, but I don't know. I mean, Alan, and Chelsea too, I'd love for your take on why do you think folks are just constantly looking for the what are you doing? Um, Give me the example.
I think in one sense, people might not know where to start, and it's easier to have a foundation to start on. So looking for those other, people, how other people are using it can give you kind of that foundation of where you're wanting to start. I was actually literally just typing a comment though as you were talking, Peyton, to basically reiterate what you were saying, that it's not the most productive starting point though, because when you're trying to copy other people's workflows, that's it's not universal. Everybody is unique. And so I think a good like mindset is, rather than like asking other people what prompt should I be using, you need to ask yourself, what part of my personal work processes create friction for me? And how could AI potentially help remove that friction?
Yeah, I
Totally
think
agree.
there's definitely, it's easy to feel FOMO around this because every time you hear about this talked in the wider world, it's the people who are going to succeed moving forward are the ones who can take the most advantage of this. And if you don't, you're going to fall behind and your career could be at risk if you don't catch up. And so then you're just doing everything you can to try to catch up, however you can try to find out, when a lot of times you're going to be able to find that out best for yourself when your unique circumstance. Although, of course, people like you doing the same job are going to probably have some great ideas for you, which is, I guess, why we're here today.
For sure. Yeah, I've recommended a book to some folks. I guess a few other things that I would add is just like, I think folks are kind of like trepidatious. I even use that word in the email I sent out about this, where like we want to use it, but we like don't trust it. And so we're really curious to see like other success stories, or like hear other success stories, so we don't end up like wasting our time or spinning your wheels. Um, and you just it's the same reason why folks, like, I think word of mouth is such a big driver of like closed won deals in the manufacturing sector, is like folks just want to know, like, are you actually a good company to work with, and like, should I be using ChatGPT or Gemini? Should I be like doing like this use case or that one? And what's actually gonna get the most bang for your buck. Um, but yeah, I read this book called, and I've recommended it to a few people in this community, called The AI Driven Leader by Jeff Woods. Jeff Woods, I think he does this like full time now, but he did formerly work at Gingell Steel. So it kind of comes at this from like a manufacturing perspective a lot in his book, which is cool. But one of the main things that he talks about is like this mindset shift, and changing the question that we ask ourselves of like, how can I do this? So like you get an assignment or whatever, a challenge, you're just like, how am I going to do this? To asking, how can AI help me do this? And I think like that's like that gets into like the beginning of like using it really as a thought partner where we're going to start first. But you know, it helps you build like true value because like Chelsea said, like you're building like your own use case. Like how is it going to stop like friction in your own workflow? So yeah. Anything else folks want to add here? And I know there's other folks on this call too. Josh, I see you here, and I just keep looking at your name too because I know that you're a big AI proponent and have used it in your own workflow. But anything you'd add to this conversation
No,
so far?
yeah, so I think you hit a lot of the main points. I've been, personally, I've been using it a lot as as like a coach and thought and a partner, I guess. And I think you hit the nail right on the head too when you said there's a lot of people that are looking for these proven cases to come out first, or people show that, hey, I did this thing, these are the results I got, and then, other people are looking to kind of take that idea and expand upon it and make it their own. But I think there's a lot of that right now, just in, talking with so many different people in the space. And your other point too, I think you made it perfectly, which was there's still a little bit of, well, actually, who said it here? Who actually just said it? Was it Rachel? So, when you use these tools, there's a little bit of skepticism too, like when it gives you an output that I think will take a little bit of time for all of us to get to work around, or work through, whether it's the companies or it's us finding out ways that we can validate this information, because no one wants to make a major decision with false information. So
Hmm.
yeah, and I would say too, if you're feeling like, I don't know if anyone else is kind of like this, but you go online and you see hundreds of videos, especially if you get stuck in that endless social media loop where it just looks like everyone's completely crushing it with AI. And I've actually reached out to a few of those people too, and a lot of them still say that, hey, look, I figured out how to do this one thing really well, but I'm still trying to figure out how to piece all of these things together. So don't take, I think it's an important reminder for us to all realize too that the stuff you see online is just, it's someone that captured their success of a small piece in a moment in time, and they don't have everything figured out. Even the big companies don't have it all figured out yet too. So taking the
Amen.
baby steps,
Preach.
right? So just kind
Yeah.
of taking those small steps to help build your confidence, and it is really important. So figure out what that end goal is that you're trying to achieve, and work on over the next few years trying to use these tools to achieve that, not just trying to solve all your problems from day one. So it's going to be a process for all of us. Just have to take it slow.
And with that, that's the end of our episode today. No, I'm just kidding. No, yeah. Thanks so much, Josh. I think that you've been using it in a really, really smart way over at Oberlin. And like you said, it's all just like it's not seamless. And maybe as we get more into like the talk of like or as we explore like AI agents that are really like doing things like kind of independently, maybe we'll all get to that point where it is really saving us a ton of time. But right now, my own personal experience, and I know a lot of the girls on this call have experienced the same thing, is it's not really a time saver at this point as we're like learning how to do things. There are some tasks that it can turn out faster as you do them over and over again, but you still have to steer the ship. And so with that, I mean, let's get into talking about use cases. Uh, Again, I'm just going to reiterate, start with strategy, start with what you're trying to accomplish, and then let's think about like how we can make that happen. So the first use case I want to talk about, and we've kind of put these into like personas. Um, the first one is the thought partner. So this persona is one that would help you kind of clarify ideas and, stress test your own assumptions or what, maybe the data is even telling you. Um, a few examples of this, and I'm glad Brendan's here joining us today, is I've used it personally as a thought partner for workshop brainstorms and like workshop organizations with Brendan. And I'll share, happy to share my screen with that. Um, you know, I I think a little bit of background before I even jump into the screen share is, what I did in the background was I met with Joe and Brendan. I researched the conference, who's going to be there, who's our audience, what are they curious about. We decided independently what our topic was going to be for this workshop based on what we thought our skill set was and what value we could really bring to the event. I personally read a book on how to run workshops, and I kind of chose a framework that I thought would work best for us. And I actually just still have it sitting on my desk. This was not staged. But I read a book about the best like workshop framework that would work well for us. And I then outlined our thoughts on what we all collectively thought we should do for this workshop. And then Brendan and I got together for like I don't know, what was it, like a 90-minute call or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, just like a casual, like kind of brainstorm, like let's work through this. And I ended up pulling up Claude for that. I think Brendan, you were in Gemini or something. That was toward the end of our 90 minutes after we had kind of been going in circles and talking about a million different things about what we could have done. And I'm just going to share my screen and kind of show you this basically the prompt that I gave Claude. So I said, you know, here's like the outline of the doc that I gave it. I said, I need some help planning activities for a 3-hour workshop that I'm hosting for 30 executives at MT Forecast. Here are some resources you can use. Here's the attendees, a little bit about them. These are not marketers, they're executives. The mission, what do we really want to accomplish? Like we had written, like I said, we wrote all of this before we went into the GPT, or I guess the chat. The workshop title, what we wanted our title to be, the description of what we thought our workshop should be, and then other, I told you I read a book, so I was like, I'm planning to follow Leanne Hughes' Spark framework for this workshop. And it says, great, I'll help you do this. And this is all like, it doesn't give you timestamps on how fast this is, but it is fast. And it detailed a full plan. And then it summarizes this for me. And it says it's going to feature these things, manufacturing specific examples, peer learning opportunities. So it's like taking in account we're in person and, it's like different things, movement and variety. And then for your prep, make sure that you do these things. And that's the end of the chat. That's it, y'all. That's all I put one thing and I was like, perfect. I took this document, which here's how it like prepares that for you. And then Brendan and I took this to the finish line. We were just like, okay, how does this match what we wanted the workshop to do? Okay, oh, you know what? We actually want to make sure we have a 15-minute break in there, different things like that. Where do we want this break to be? All of that sort of things. It even told me different things that I might need for the event. And that's it. So I'm going to stop share because the chat's been going crazy since I started talking about that. But Brendan, I mean, I'd be curious for your thoughts on just like that specific use case or your own use of
Mhm.
LLMs as a thought partner as well.
Yeah, it was I think that was the first time I'd used it in tandem with another person, you Peyton for this one. So that was kind of interesting. And then I was in Gemini and you were in Claude. We are kind of like battling back and forth. So that was an interesting use case, like to like bring in the AI as like another top partner into that meeting, which I thought we had a really good workshop, so I think it worked really well for us. We did do a lot of our own work and thinking, like it was our workshop, but it helped us format it in a way that kind of fit that framework from that book that you read, which it would have taken us a lot longer because like then I would have like I didn't read the book, but so like I would have had to read the book and understand the framework. So it actually saved us a lot of time there. Like it saved me like probably 8 hours of reading, um, so that I could like. But I picked up what Peyton was trying to put down, and it got us to a good output. But yeah, we still had to like we came up with the idea. Like our strategy and our thinking was throughout the thing. It just like helped us, yeah, organize and format. So that was really cool. Um, I'll say the thing that I use it for most frequently, like, and I always use it, is just summarizing meetings. We always client meetings, internal meetings. Like, there's just so many things out here, and like, not everybody attended the meeting. So, or like, I report to Sultana. Like, I want to keep her kind of updated on where things are at with clients. Or like Kevin's the performance marketer in my portfolio. He's not always on every single call, but I can make a nice summary so Kevin can see what we talked about. If it relates back to a campaign so that he has some idea. And like otherwise, I probably am going to forget, because those are 60-minute meetings. Um, and I iterated on that prompt that I use. Um, I typically use Gemini these days. I've been getting a lot better results in Gemini than ChatGPT. But I basically tell it like organize the meeting notes into discussion topics with supporting documentation and any like decisions or action points that came out of that part of the meeting. So it breaks it down into multiple sections of what we talked about. Like, hey, we talked about Google Ads here. What decisions did we make? We talked about website stuff. What decisions did we make? What discussion points were there? And it outputs a really nice clean format that I can just upload to the team. I have to edit it a little bit. It spells people's names wrong and it doesn't always capture everything perfectly. So I try to do the summary right after the meeting so everything's fresh in my mind too. Because it's not going to be perfect. I will say one thing that's been really helpful, and I think somebody up mentioned like it just takes so long to get to a use case, and did I actually save time? So yeah, the first couple times I did this, it took me a lot of time to like figure out like I had to tell it what format I wanted to put it into. And I kind of gave it some examples of some other meeting summaries that I found on Google that I thought would have been helpful for me. So I gave it an example. I told it what I was looking for, what I've been doing now, and I'll find my actual prompt and I'll put it in the chat. But I've been going back. I have this prompt that basically like I get a summary and then I work with Google or with Gemini to get it to the place where it's a final. Then I can go back, after I complete the work, and I go back and tell it what should my prompt have been at the beginning of the chat to get to the final output. So it cuts out all of the, me going back and forth with it. And so I do that a couple times. Like I've gotten to a place now where I pretty much can just like post my transcript, my writing rules, and my summary prompt, and I get a result back in one time. So it takes me like I don't know 20 seconds to gather all that stuff. I'll share that. I'll share all that in the chat. Sorry, people that are listening on the podcast, because you're not going to see this. Maybe we'll post it in the description.
Missing
But
out.
yeah, it's been that prompt's been super helpful. So I'll post my meeting summary prompt, and I'll also put my prompt improver prompt.
Nice. Yeah, and
Um,
don't worry, folks. I've been trying to be better about the chat and then going into the collective and like sharing insights about like things that have come up there later
oh,
in
there you go.
Industrial Marketing
Okay.
Collective. So anything that gets posted there, I'll try and summarize and maybe build in some more tools to the collective space too.
I'll
So
share one more recent one. I was working with a client on some e-commerce stuff. They were getting ready for Black Friday, and we had Facebook ads. I post about this on LinkedIn if you want to go see the full story. I started this in ChatGPT, basically like help me framework out how to use Google Tag Manager to track e-commerce things inside of Meta so I could see like purchases and purchase volume. I'm not Kevin McClary. I don't know how to do all this stuff. So and it was like they're on Wix and all this other like weird stuff. So I used ChatGPT and it didn't work. It gave me back something that was really complicated. I followed everything. I had to go back and forth like explain like all these weird things you're telling me. So I published that into my campaign and I missed some like it tracked the conversions, but it didn't track the conversion volume or the amount. So I just like blew everything up, went back to Gemini, and it gave me really quickly back a really clear progression on how to actually build out Tag Manager, my conversions inside of Meta, like what I need to be tracking inside of Meta. And then it showed me like, here's how you actually have to test it to make sure it's working. So I kind of wish I would have done that. Would have saved me a lot of heartache. So I've been finding a lot more success with Gemini over ChatGPT for pretty much everything I've been doing. I think
I
Gemini is
see some
maybe
head nods on that one
it's a little
too.
Gemini's a little
Yeah.
robotic for like writing. And I've been trying to like go back to doing my own writing on LinkedIn just so like it's my voice again. Um, but yeah, it just feels Gemini's a little bit robotic on writing. So I probably like lean more towards Claude if you're going to do any sort of writing. I have not been using ChatGPT like at all recently.
I'm a Claude fan, but also the paid version of
Yeah,
Chat GPT is
Joel asked a good question. So he said, "Do you
really
think
nice.
Gemini was better for Google Analytics and Google Tag Manager because it's a Google-owned asset, or is the tool better overall?" I mean, Joel, yeah, probably. Like it just knows its own properties probably better than ChatGPT. Like ChatGPT was giving me back like some like buttons to click and some UI stuff that seemed like it was like from a old like a version or two older inside of Tag Manager. Whereas Gemini like knows what Gemini or what Google Tag Manager currently
I
looks
would
like.
imagine the training for those two different
Yeah,
properties is very
yeah,
different. So like ChatGPT might be like scraping random blogs, whereas
yeah,
like
exactly. Gemini might be looking at
Gemini
like
is
the actual
trained
tool.
with like the
Yeah.
actual knowledge base of like all of Google's tools.
But
So
to
yeah.
answer your other question, Joel, I do think Gemini is a lot more clear for like actual instruction type things. Like, ChatGPT gets like very verbose and not very clear and concise. It's like, I just want like a technical instruction on how to do the thing. So just like, how do I change my, oil in my truck? Like, I don't need you to like give me a whole story. Like, I'm like, grandma's recipe on something on some blog. Just tell me how to do the thing. So I think Gemini does a better job of that.
Nice. Thanks, Brendan.
Yeah.
We've had a little bit of chatter in the chat about custom GPTs, and that's actually where I wanted to go next, because we've built a few custom GPTs here to help with like that clarifying ideas and stress testing things. And one of them was built by our very own Alan Fenewald. So, Alan, you want to tell us a little bit more about your custom GPT and share a little bit of the messy middle of how it was made
Oh,
and what it does?
I sure do. So full disclosure, I am like a chat GPT person as far as these go. I haven't really messed with the other ones very long because I've spent so much time in GPT that I'd want to continue using it, which I think is kind of their goal. So they got me. But I, like someone said in the chat, haven't used normal chat GPT like there's the open program and forever. I've been in a custom GPT for everything I've done for like over a month now, probably because there's just so much necessary background information when we're trying to use this in any sort of like a content background or creation sort of way that it's just a waste of time to not build a custom GPT first. And
So,
when
so for folks who don't know what a custom GPT is, just in case, because I don't want to assume any, like this is all still very new and we're still like getting used to it, but a custom GPT is one that you are like you're building rules, giving it instructions of how it should always like start when you start a new conversation, like where it should reference first. So you can upload documents, you can upload, reference materials of all kinds, and save it into like basically the brain of this custom GPT as like a reference point, and then you can also give it specific instructions too. But Alan, I'll let you take it
Yeah,
from
yeah.
here.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that for me. I forgot to give any context. So when it's for a client, it's usually pretty easy. I'm just putting in, our strategy docs, having it go through their style guide or anything like that. But the one I made that was a bit trickier, which I will share here, was one we made because I had done a lot of professional development work around conversion related content mostly, as well as like consumer psychology, social behavioral science stuff, anything that goes into trying to figure out how to get somebody to be persuaded into doing a thing you would like them to do, like perhaps buying a thing. And there's a lot of highfalutin information in there that can be difficult for somebody who just comes on the team, especially if they're not a B2B marketing background, to be able to take with them and immediately take into a client deliverable. So that's why I wanted to make a GPT that kind of functioned as a coach, as a learning partner, and as like just to synthesize a ton of information that we have for training or ourselves as writers, so that it doesn't feel so overwhelming and they just get like a stack of PhD level books right off the bat. So let me try to get this share going here. Okay, I think this is working. So I just figured I would share what went into this GPT to help it be all it can be. So I gave it some Gorilla 76 internal instructions on how G76 thinks about copy, what it needs to always keep in mind if it's going to be given any suggestions to writers, especially on like here is something you could actually use to write with. Um, then we have our styling and messaging assets. This here is actually an enormous file, this breakthrough advertising for B2B copywriters, because breakthrough advertising is a book about direct mail copywriting. And so it's highly psychological, persuasive, very science oriented on trying to get people's attention and hold it and convince them to do a thing on one piece of paper, which is something that I felt was useful to extrapolate into really all of our conversion content. So what I did was I created an enormous deck of what I thought the B2B takeaways were from this book that was not necessarily specific to B2B. And I gave it to it and said, hey, please keep all of this in mind for anything that we ask you to do, which I think is probably the biggest time saver because that book is A, super expensive, and B, super dense. So it's I think really handy for them to have it here instead of having to go through it themselves. And also we take a lot of CXL courses, and unless you are willing to sit through the course, that's kind of just wasted money every month, because we're not always taking the courses, but they can definitely come in handy whenever you take away all the best things they have in those courses and add it to your GPT. So a lot of this is me like copying, pasting, and just making docs and feeding it into the program because you can't just tell it to scrape CXL's training site. Um, and so there's a lot of CXL related stuff in here that I added like that, as well as some other external resources that I could just give the link to, and it would scrape and say, okay, I got that. I'll remember all that stuff. So it's just anything where like, yeah, everything in this resource is golden. I want all my writing to reflect this. Yeah, tell it to remember it. There is a limit to how much stuff you can tell it to remember, though. So I hit the wall with this. Keep that in mind. Like this thing is stuffed to the gills. I gave it some other classic copywriting texts that we use as training. Um, so some of it was able to like kind of just scrape online because the majority of the text is already out there and available. Some of it I had to do the thing with breakthrough advertising where I had to kind of feed it the stuff I wanted it to have. Um, and I told it what its job is. That's really important. I told it this is your purpose. No matter what we do moving forward, this is why you exist. And so that saves a lot of time too that you would waste with the outside GPT. And here's a list of all the files I uploaded. It's not very pretty, but I asked the GPT, hey, tell me how you were built, and this is what it gave me. So that's kind of handy too. So yeah, if there's any questions on that, I feel free to let me know, but otherwise I'm going to stop sharing.
Thanks, Alan. Yeah, it's super helpful to say like, okay, this is how, because we agencies specifically there we do have turnover. Gorilla has a higher tenure than I think a lot of agencies, but we do bring on new team members, and so it's like, okay, we want to make sure that no matter what you get, you're getting like a consistent product from Gorilla writers, and so we've just been using it as like another layer in our training tool and like another resource for folks to skill up with. So.
Yeah, and it can be handy to go back and forth between custom GPTs. Like I'll do something on my client specific one, but know that it has all the nuts and bolts that the client needs to see, and I'll take that over into the messaging one. I call this one G76 messaging, and say like, okay, how can we improve this just in a persuasive element, or like just in a social psychology kind of way? Like what are the fine points that other GPT is probably not thinking about? And then you just got to be careful not to let your new content take away any of the good things that you had before.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, I know we're getting we've spent a lot of time talking about the thought partner, but I do think that's probably the most important just like starting place for using AI. the next like persona that I wanted us to talk about a little bit was like the detective. So this is the persona that's going to be doing maybe some research for you, recognizing patterns for you, helping you to develop maybe deeper insights, dig in more. So a few things that I know we've used it for here at Gorilla would be like, pattern recognition. So you can export your paid media reports from LinkedIn or Meta, and you can upload them and say, I typically, when I do that, will like add an extra column with like more notes or like nuance about each ad set to give it more to go off of. But then, say, what do you think? What trends are you seeing in this? And then I've also used it for the Industrial Marketing Summit. We've used it to analyze survey results there to help us identify different trends that have come up in our surveys for post-event. So, Maya, I know that you have used it specifically in like the deep research function. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that use case for you? And I know you can only share so much on a screen when it's a specific client, but yeah,
Yeah.
tell us more about that.
I actually do. I was thinking I do have a resource, the prompt that I initially started with that has just things you fill out. So I can like give that to you, Peyton. You can share it out later. And I can't take credit for it because it's actually from Brendan originally. But I did use it in practice with one of my clients for a specific use case, which is very different from what Peyton actually said, like with the data and like analyzing it. I never really upload data and have it analyzed because I have like trust issues, I guess, with Gemini and ChatGPT. So I haven't used it in like spreadsheet and like data kind of ways, but I've used it for um, doing market research in deep research mode. So I love using the deep research mode in Gemini specifically. To everyone's point, like I'm not a ChatGPT person, I'm a Gemini person, and I like the outputs that I get with Gemini. But essentially using this prompt to kind of get a starting point, like for example, this use case in particular was with a client that they wanted to break into a new industry. They have a very broad product offering, can be applied to a bunch of different verticals, but they didn't really know. They had one customer, so we didn't want to like have to wait to talk to this customer, kind of speed up the process of like learning and like save the time of like researching on Google myself, right? So it did pull out, things like where's the biggest like some messaging angles, what are the exact examples of job titles, specific job titles, like where do they hang out online, what are some like messaging theories to test in advertising, and kind of the magic there is just like asking it follow-up questions and then like digging into the research of like what sources did they pull this information from. So it does lead to sometimes a bit of a rabbit hole, but you can like check the research and like read, at least I read the reports that it's like basing
And
its
that's,
information
I think
on.
that's a really important piece of it is like you do have to verify. Like you can't,
Sometimes like, oh, this isn't a legit report or something. Like this is just a made up report or something. Like you want to make sure it's not like pulling it from a bad source. So that's
yep.
why deep research is nice too. It doesn't just spit it out after like 2 minutes. Like it takes like 30 minutes usually to like give everything out. And then it like links each of their answers, like where did they get this from? So you can like actually read it yourself. And they usually only use like 2 or 3 reports. So it's not like you have to dig through 28 sources, but
Yeah.
it's helpful to like know where they got the answers from. But yeah, and then you can ask it follow-up questions. Like it's a really good research partner and say like, hey, here's the example company. This is why it's a good fit. Why would other companies want to, like, what else would resonate with these target companies? And things like that. So a lot of like product market fit research is, yeah, like that's how I like to use deep research mode.
hmm And I do want to clarify for folks that haven't used it before, it is like a setting. So you could go
Yeah.
into the chat and then you say, I want you to use deep research. Not just because if you just start a chat, it's just gonna like quickly, you'll get those like 2 second
The quick answers. Yeah.
responses, which can still get you there. But sometimes you're just like, I want you to really like dig through the search engines and like find like the detail, and that's when you've got to kind of like just let it run and come back later, sort of thing. Gemini is nice in this way in the deep research function because it will let you like you'll request it to do something, and then you can like edit the instructions before it starts doing the research. Whereas
Mhm.
sometimes ChatGPT will just go and you'll like get the report back later. And you're like, whoa, 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 you got off track here. Um, cool. And I know we're just at like a minute left, so we've also talked about using it for audience research, and we can maybe dive into that a little bit later. But I do want to get to like the last persona, which is the executioner. And I know that's like everyone's like, oh, a scary name. But this is the doer. This is the one that turns like your strategic ideas into that clean, consistent output. And Kevin, you had one specific example there that folks could use and start to shape maybe some ideas on how they could apply it to themselves.
Yeah, totally. I'm gonna share. Well, before I share my screen, I'll give a little like background on this one. So, I run the paid media campaigns, LinkedIn, Meta ads, and things for a lot of our clients at Gorilla. And uh, if y'all have ever run campaigns like that, you probably know you can upload lists into the ad platform with customer data or company data, and it helps you target specific users or companies, or you can even build lookalike audiences based on your existing customers. And when you export that data, even if it's out of a really good CRM like HubSpot or Salesforce or something like that, like it still comes out pretty messy. And it can even be formatted weird based on the form that someone originally filled out. If you asked for just name instead of first name, last name, it won't be separated. And I know Rachel asked a question earlier, mentioned like you were trying to do something similar where you were like exporting zip codes, but then you also wanted to include state and like locate, like overall location. And so I've used prompts to help me organize data that way to fit the template that the ad platform likes to get the data. So, like, here's an example Meta, when you are uploading a list, they want it to be in their very specific format. Like, they have 3 lines for email because they want you to include as many emails as possible. But like you have to have it organized this way: email, phone, um, first name, last name, zip code, and then same with LinkedIn. And if you don't upload it in this exact format, it just will not receive it. And so it's super annoying if you have a really long list and you want to organize it because yes, there are things you can do within a spreadsheet. You can do find and replace, you can do all these different shortcuts, but who has time to learn all of that? I know I don't. So what I would rather do is just write prompts to give to ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude or any of them. I've used all of them for something like this and gotten very similar output, but I basically just tell it, hey, you're a spreadsheet expert. I'm going to provide a CSV spreadsheet with data, and I need it organized into these 5 columns because those are the columns that LinkedIn wants. And in the sheet I provide, there's a column titled name that has first and last name. But when you organize it for me, you're going to separate it into the first name and last name columns. And then also there's a column titled employee company. This was a specific example from one of our clients. They had employee company column that had the company name followed by a dash and then the city name. So I told ChatGPT to clean that and take out the dash and the city name, and I just want the company name. And I have other prompts where I've done similar things where I needed um, the column titled work email to be just email or company phone to just be phone and so on. And so when I've done that, I don't have a spreadsheet to show you because I can't share our clients' information, but it organizes it exactly how I need. Like it has just the columns I need, and then I can go in and upload it directly into the ad platform, and there's no issue. Um,
And the impact is a much like one, you got the data clean, and then two, your match rate on that like customer information that you already have in your CRM is a lot higher. So you can then target, retarget, your actual customers or build lookalike audience to your actual customers in these platforms. Game changer.
Exactly.
And you've made it in a way where now it's like, obviously we're working with a lot of different clients. So it's really nice for us because we can do this like, okay, now we have it's something that's repetitive for
Yeah,
us.
yeah. It's repeatable. It doesn't
Mhm.
seem to hallucinate. I haven't really
Mhm.
had to change the prompt all that much. So this is something that has actually saved me time. I know Joel had a comment earlier, like, I feel like I'm just chasing things around. It's not saving me time to research. Well, this is one that I can say with certainty has saved me countless hours. Um, so there are some things out there that can help you save time already.
For sure. For sure. I think the first 4 weeks that I was using any sort of LLM, I think I just wasted a lot of time. I wasted a lot of time. But now I'm finding like the patterns and the repetitive tasks that I can go back to it with. And I know the things that, like Brendan was saying earlier, the things that I want to keep doing myself. I want to write my own LinkedIn post. I want to, things like that. That matter to me in a different way. Um, well, there's definitely more, obviously, that we could talk about here, but seeing as it's we're approaching the top of the hour, I want us to go ahead and wrap up, and I really hope that this conversation has left you all with a bit more context on like what generative AI tools are and like what they can do for you, and has inspired you to uncover some of the use cases that are really going to impact your own workflow, and things like that, so you can start experimenting more. Um, Before we wrap up, any lightning round of advice from our folks here on the call, and this goes to the 50 of you that are in the room. It doesn't just have to be gorillas. Feel free.
I just put in the chat, but just one thing I think, especially for the copywriters, keep in mind is you don't own things that you didn't write. So if you put out a thought leadership blog or a brochure or something like that, and GPT wrote the whole thing for you, there, and your competitor finds out about that for some reason, they can steal that, slap their branding on it, and then use it just like you're using it. So if you're like, you need to rewrite things, it's not the final draft that the GPT gives you ever.
Hmm. Yeah, awesome. Well, we'll let it end there. But folks have been asking for resource links and things like that. Uh, I just want to say thanks to everyone for joining and sharing, especially in the chat. I hate that I didn't even get to pull Carrie up on stage. She's using tools in some really cool ways. So, Carrie, next time we'll definitely have another conversation. And I'm probably just going to DM you too. But folks, if you want to keep conversations going that started here with the folks in this community, feel free to join us in the Industrial Marketing Collective. It's a free community. There's discussion boards, and I'm reorganizing that to showcase some more tools and resources in a bigger way for us all there. So, industrialmarketingcollective.com, you can request access to the space, or you can DM me or Alan on LinkedIn. And then our next IMC Live is going to be the last one of the year. Can't believe we've made it a whole nother year with IMC Live. And we're going to be talking about the marketing hits and misses that we've seen across our own industrial portfolio this year, with an emphasis on the hits. And we know we love to hear from you guys too. So if there's some things that you've seen that have really been working for you, then mark your calendar, pour yourself a cup of cocoa, and join us for the last IMC Live of 2025. And we will see you then. Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate just the openness with sharing today.
Yeah, love the community.